You are not yourself. You think you are, but you're not. And the truth is, you never were. Every day you wake up, you think, you act, you make choices, and you believe this is your life. But what if it isn't? What if the thoughts in your head are not truly yours? What if the decisions you make were decided long before you were aware of them? There is a part of you you never see, a part that lives beneath your awareness, quiet, invisible, but always active. Carl Jung warned about this. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Think about that. Something inside you is making decisions for you.
And you don't even notice your reactions, your habits, your fears, your patterns. They don't come from nowhere. They come from your past, from things you experienced but never understood.
From moments that shaped you without your permission, you think you're choosing, but you're repeating the same behaviors, the same emotions, the same outcomes, again and again and again, because what you don't face doesn't disappear. It goes deeper, it hides, and then it controls you silently, without asking, without warning. You call it personality, you call it instinct. You call it just who I am. But what if it's just programming? Carl Jung also said, thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. Real thinking requires awareness. It requires effort.
It requires you to stop and question yourself.
But most people don't. They react, they assume, they follow what feels familiar, because thinking means facing uncomfortable truths. It means questioning everything you thought was real. So instead, people choose the easy path. They copy opinions, they repeat what they hear, and they call it thinking. But it's not thinking, it's imitation.
It's conditioning, it's unconscious behavior. And the more you do it, the further you move away from yourself. Carl Jung said something else. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. But most people never look inside, they search outside for answers.
For validation, for identity. They try to become someone without understanding who they already are. They build a life on top of something unstable.
Because the foundation was never examined. And when problems come, they don't understand why, because the real cause was always hidden inside them.
Carl Jung also said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The things that trigger you are not random. The people you dislike are not accidents. The reactions you feel are reflections. They show you something about yourself, something you haven't accepted, something you haven't faced, something that still controls you. But instead of looking within, you blame others.
You judge them, you avoid the truth, and the cycle continues again and again and again until one day you realize nothing has changed. Different people, different situations, but the same outcomes, the same pain.
The same patterns, because the problem was never outside, it was always inside. Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But most people never reach this point. They adapt, they adjust, they blend in, they become acceptable, but not real. They live, but they don't become. They survive, but they don't understand. They exist, but they are not aware, because becoming yourself requires facing yourself.
It requires seeing what you've been avoiding. It requires breaking patterns, letting go of illusions, and taking control of what controls you. But that is difficult.
That is uncomfortable. That is rare. So most people never do it. They stay where it's safe, where it's familiar.
Is pain because the mind does not care about truth, it cares about survival. And survival loves repetition, even if that repetition is destroying you. So you keep going day after day, thinking you're in control,
Thinking you're making choices, thinking you're living your life. But you're not. You are following patterns. You are repeating programs. You are reacting to things you never question. You think you're free, but you're conditioned. You think you're aware, but you're unconscious. You think you're yourself, but you're shaped by everything you never understood. So now ask yourself, are you really thinking or just repeating? Carl Jung also said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Think about that. Becoming aware is not comfortable. It means facing things you tried to ignore, the truth you avoided, parts of yourself.
You didn't want to see. That's why most people stay unconscious, not because they can't see, but because they don't want to.
Jung believed everyone carries a shadow, a hidden side of the self, the part you deny, the part you hide. But hiding it doesn't remove it, it gives it power, because what you refuse to face controls you from the dark. Carl Jung said, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. But awakening requires silence, and most people are afraid of silence because in silence there is no distraction, only truth. Jung also said, man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health, but you avoid difficulty, you avoid discomfort, you avoid growth, and then you wonder why nothing changes. Because growth only happens when you face what hurts. Carl Jung believed the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, but becoming yourself is not automatic. It is a decision, a conscious choice.
To break patterns, to question everything, to stop following and start thinking. So now ask yourself, are you really thinking or just repeating? If you understand this, you're already different based on the ideas of Carl Jung.
You think awareness is easy. It's not. Because the moment you become aware, you start seeing everything. You start seeing your patterns, your reactions, your triggers. And suddenly, you realize something uncomfortable.
You were never in control. You were reacting, repeating, living on autopilot. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life. And now you see why. Because the unconscious is not silent, it is active, it is shaping everything, your choices, your relationships, your future, without asking you, without warning you. And the worst part is, it feels normal. That's why people never question it. That's why people never change, because they don't see the problem. But you do.
Now you do. So now the real question is, what will you do with this awareness? Will you ignore it or will you face it?
And maybe this is the first moment you're actually seeing yourself, not the version you were told to be, but the one you've been avoiding. So now you have a choice, stay the same or finally wake up. Inspired by Carl Jung.